So what is real estate going to look like in Winnipeg in 2022? Stay tuned because I'm going to talk to you today about whether or not it's better for buyers to wait and see if 2022 is a softer market or if sellers should be selling to get max dollar. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and REMAX professionals here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I keep getting asked if this market is going to cool down in 2022 or if I think this crazy seller's market full of bidding wars and increasing prices is going to continue. And keeping in mind that there is a chance that I am 50% right or 50% wrong, watch this video and just know that I did do some research and I'm going based on my own interpretation of what I've been seeing, but hey, I could always be wrong. When COVID set in, I said there is likely going to be a slowing of the market. People aren't going to want to be buying and selling homes when they're concerned about this virus, and look where that's landed us now. So without further ado, these are the factors that I have weighed in coming up with my assessment. So the first factor I want to talk about, and I actually am not really giving it any weight, I'm just going to kind of ignore it, but it is something I want to add in here as kind of a disclaimer, is at the time of filming this, the Omicron variant, I might be saying that wrong, is the new concern. So what we have seen throughout the time of COVID is the initial concerns over COVID and then the Delta variant and variants going forward. And now we're dealing with this most recent variant that is giving people some concern. Now in the past, when we have had these concerns, what would happen is there might be some government intervention and restrictions in terms of people moving into the country, moving out of the country, or just leaving Manitoba in general. So I am going to kind of negate that. I feel like at this point, it's another variant. It seems like the variants coming out have actually, unfortunately, become the new normal. So I'm not going to give too much weight to that. And I'm just going to pretend like that's somewhere in the background and we're not really paying attention to that. But another factor that is important to pay attention to are the interest rates. So when you're paying attention to the news and you hear that the Bank of Canada has kept the overnight rate the same or has increased it, decreased it, that's important news to tune into when you're looking at the real estate market in general, because really what this means is buyer affordability is going to be impacted. The overnight rate is what banks borrow money from the government at. So if those interest rates start going up, what you're going to see is mortgage interest rates going up, which in turn does affect buyer affordability. So the interest rates throughout 2022 are going to play a huge factor on where the market settles. Supply and demand of homes are another factor we're going to want to consider. So what we have seen in 2020, 2021 is a lack of supply and just so much demand. Interest rates driving that, of course, but then sellers not being so in favor of selling because there is a virus out there and it's scary to have strangers come into your home. Also, another deterrent to selling right now is that you have to find another home, and that's become quite impossible. So supply and demand in terms of housing, also something we're going to keep an eye on. Immigration rates. In 2021, we saw a reopening of the Canadian borders to allow for, I believe it was just around 400,000 new permanent residents to Canada. The government has announced a target rate of about, I think, just slightly over 400,000, like 410,000 or something for 2022, and a slightly higher number than that for 2023. So people coming into the country or into the province are obviously going to need to find places to live, whether that initially be rental properties or new residences will depend on personal circumstance, but where you're going to see is a positive net immigration most likely to Manitoba in 2022. In 2020, we also noticed a bit of a change in consumer behavior. So what 2020 taught us is that things can change on a dime. So this new virus came in, a lot of people were laid off, and money became tight. So what we've kind of started to see is a little bit more of a savings pattern in the population here, kind of like a rainy day fund. But as confidence increases in any market, what you're going to see are people spending more of those savings and slight change in consumer behavior. Depending on where things land through this this year and our confidence in the home purchasing process, there is a good chance that you're going to see buyers out there with down payments available from their savings over this period. Another change though too was that there were a lot of small businesses that were impacted, and families just in different sectors too. So you might also see that there's some buyers actually retracting from the market, while there's some buyers more aggressively investing in the market with their savings. There's kind of a balancing act there. Another factor to take into consideration are kind of migration patterns within Canada and even within local provinces as well. So what we saw a lot in 2020 and 2021 was these larger cities, so Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, that are known for being a little bit more unaffordable, is we started to see some migration away from these city centers. People were working remotely, so now they didn't necessarily have to live in downtown Toronto, downtown Vancouver. Some people even moved to the Maritimes from Toronto, is what I keep hearing, because it's so much more affordable. And that seemed to be a trend throughout the country. So people moving somewhere where they could still work remotely from within Canada, but also somewhere where they would have more space and a lower cost of living. Of course, if jobs start calling people back to the office, or we see changes in those kinds of patterns, what we are going to see is changes continuing in those migration patterns with different demand for different sectors. Supply chain issues are another factor we want to consider. So whether it be fresh fruit this past year, I don't know if anybody's gotten a good clamshell of strawberries as an aside. I feel like ours are good for one day and then they're rotten since COVID set in. Or if it's a matter of windows for your new construction build or other building products. What we have discovered this year is there are some major supply chain issues, and that lack of supply is making it difficult for some builders to navigate this market. And that will have an impact, of course, on the availability of new construction options. Another factor to consider is Manitoba's economy in itself. What you will find in Manitoba is that we are a major exporter of many natural resources, tons of farms here, and other resources, of course, too. And what that means is that we are very dependent on supply and demand of our products from here. Also, we're going to want to look at the overall employment levels here, because that obviously, if you don't have a job, it's hard to buy a home. But if we're doing well in employment here and we have low unemployment levels, that's always a factor to keep an eye on too. So with all of those factors in mind, here are my predictions. And again, take this lightly. This is just what I'm seeing and experiencing already going on out there. But this is what I think will happen to our real estate market here in 2022. I predict early in the year, what we are going to see is an announcement from the Bank of Canada increasing that overnight rate. And as a result, we're going to see interest rates on mortgages go up a little bit. Now, when I say a little bit, I really do mean a little bit. I'm not anticipating any huge jumps in interest rates in that period. It's not going to be something that you're jumping by a whole point or anything like that, or at least I don't think so. But they haven't done that historically, made any adjustments super rapidly. It's kind of been a gradual increase in rates or decrease in rates too. So I'm not anticipating anything major in terms of the actual rate increase. Now, what this does do though, is it does impact buyer affordability. Anytime interest rates increase, what you will see is buyers' affordability decreasing a little bit. Now, that being said though, it likely won't decrease their actual pre-approval amounts, because if you look at the qualifying rate, which is currently 5.25%, that is still likely going to be the number that these buyers are having to get qualified at a mortgage at. I don't know, I can delve into this in another video, but the rules in Canada and in Winnipeg too are that if you have a mortgage approval, you have to qualify as if you are paying 5.25% or your rate plus 2%. You have to qualify though at the higher rate of the two. So say interest rates right now are 2%, then you have to qualify at 5.25% because that's the higher of the two numbers. But say your interest rate was at 4%, then you would have to qualify at 6%. 4 plus 2 gets you to that 6. So it's always the higher of the two. But we aren't yet at that rate of 3.25% or higher on these interest rates. So what you're going to see is that it won't necessarily affect the pre-approval amounts that buyers are getting because they're likely still under that 5.25. they're likely at that 5.25 mark already, and not until the interest rates start getting to 3.25 and above will you start seeing a decrease in the pre-approval amounts. Another thing to note is even when you hear these announcements of changes in interest rates, buyer behavior doesn't typically change for another 60 to 90 days, I would say on average, later. A lot of this is because people are already pre-approved, and that bank pre-approval guarantees them their current rate for a period typically of 60 to 90 days. So supply and demand changes. So a lot of the holdback for sellers not putting their homes on the market right now is because of concerns over obviously COVID and people coming into their home. Totally understand. And another driving factor seems to be a lack of options for them to buy on the other end. And I totally get that too. Who wants to be homeless? But what you're going to see, and I keep finding, is that COVID has now been here for 2 years and it's become the new normal, and people don't seem nearly as concerned about it as they used to be when having people tour their homes. I think what we will see in 2022 is increased seller confidence, which will mean more homes hitting the market. Immigration into Manitoba in 2021 is expected to be on the positive side. I believe that there were about 10,000 people welcomed into Manitoba in 2021 as part of the new nominee program. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that same level of newcomers coming into the market. Now, a lot of the time when these people are being sponsored, they do live with their family initially and before going and finding a property. But at some point, these newcomers are going to need to find housing for themselves and their own family to live in. So I do see positive net immigration into the province, and I do think that'll play a part as well on that whole supply and demand side of things. Another point of consideration here too is our employment sector. So our overall economy is back to where it was pretty much, I hear, from 2019. So any jobs lost in 2020 seem to have been regained. Also, what we have seen here is employee compensation has actually increased at a level higher than the national average. So our people working here are actually getting paid more, higher pay raises than other provinces. So all of that combined, net positive migration, solid jobs here, higher pay, all positive indicators that there is going to be continued strength in the real estate market here. Now, I will say too, I do think that building in Manitoba has, well, and I'm guessing in every province, has become a little bit less attractive. There's been a lot of uncertainty for people when they are building because of the constraints and supply chain issues that COVID has brought. Also, what you're going to find, and what I've been finding, are clients that have been signing building contracts in 2021. Most of them are being told their new home won't be finished until 2023. So that's an incredibly long amount of time to wait to be into your next home. And then of course there are those escalation clauses that are very concerning for purchasers. I'll link a video where I talk about those. But it can mean that the cost of your build can jump by as much as $35,000, $40,000 from start to finish, which again, contributes to the uncertainty and concern that buyers have. I could see a slight leveling out in the new construction sector unless the supply chain issues are worked out in 2022, just because the timelines and costs make it really hard for buyers to get into that market. Also, it's driving more people toward the resale market. So my final prediction for 2022 is that I think we will continue to be in a strong seller's market. Perhaps it won't be as aggressive. So what we're going to see are some more sensitivities coming from buyers because their monthly payments are increasing as interest rates are increasing. So we might see a slight decline in just how aggressive people are willing to be in the bidding wars. I do still think we will see bidding wars, but maybe instead of it being like 10 to 15 offers on a house, sometimes it'll be like 3 or 4, something where buyers actually stand a chance at getting the home, whereas right now it feels like you've won the lottery if your buyer is the successful bidder. What I do not anticipate though in 2022 is a decrease in home prices. While we did see a very sharp spike in home prices, we still are nowhere near catching up on the inventory levels that we need to place all of these buyers out there looking into a home. Also, that's not being helped by the positive net migration into the province and these more solid job opportunities as well as income levels. We have a lot of things going on that are kind of contributing to keep that demand up high where it currently is. So yes, I think that home values are going to be maintained through 2022. I think that the comps we are looking at now to support comps for 2022 will remain relevant. I'm not anticipating huge decreases. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a slight increase, but more on the scale of what we typically see in Manitoba, which is kind of those slow increasing values in real estate here. Manitoba has historically never been a market to see huge increases in prices, although we saw those in 2021. We have always just been a market that was on a slow upward trajectory, gaining value year after year for, I think it was nearly 40 years, with only 2 years in there where we saw some decreases in price. But overall, Manitoba has always been a super solid investment. We are well behind the national average in terms of home prices here, and that seems to make us a nice, affordable, safe haven for people to come, live, invest their money, and I anticipate that strong market to continue on. I do think it will still be a seller's market in 2022, and I just hope that all you buyers that are out there looking right now are able to find a home. And if you are looking to sell a home, I also don't think you're going to be in a bad position if you're waiting until 2022, although in all honesty, it's not going to be an issue when you sell. I really don't think so. I think that the market is going to be very strong in January 2022, and it should still be strong well into the year in 2022. Those are my predictions. I'm going to leave this video up, even if it means I have to eat crow pie, but that is where I anticipate seeing the housing market go in 2022. Again, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and REMAX Professionals, and if you found value in this video today, please be sure to hit that like button. It really helps me determine what to film next time, and also be sure to subscribe to our channel so that you see all of our Winnipeg related content coming out. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good one.